Good evening and welcome to another episode of A Scotsman Talks To on our brand new exclusive Thursday evening slot. In case anyone tuned in Tuesday and wondered why I wasn't there, it's because we don't do Tuesdays anymore. I sold out to Thursday and exclusively to Thursday. Well, tonight we have another guest, a Calgarian. Well, I think he's a Calgarian through and through, but, he lives here. He has got Scottish ancestry. He is an actor, a performer. He is also a gentleman who has his own kind of guest talk show like this. Would you class this as a talk show? I think it probably would be. Yeah, we'll call it talk show. We'll give them a grandiose title. But yes, he hosts his own talent talk, which goes out every Saturday, if memory serves. So I'm kind of turning the tables on our guest tonight, a man who's used to sitting back, asking some questions and letting his guests kind of squirm and answer as well as he can. Tonight, it is him. He shall be squirming to my questions. That sounds a bit ominous, sorry. I kind of don't want to sound like the, Dr. Evil of the talk show. I love that. I'm now calling myself a talk show host. Oh, love it. Okay, folks, thank you for joining. We're going to kick off tonight. Our guest tonight is Garry MacLean. He is from Calgary. He is an actor. He's been in a few very kind of famous local shows that have been made. If memory serves, Hell on Wheels, Winona Earp, I believe so. Yes, I've got to be careful because so many of these guys from Calgary do all these shows, but if I remember correctly, that was definitely there as well. But Hell on Wheels, doesn't matter. That's good enough. I love it. He has done so much, and of course, he hosts his own show, Talent Talk. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Garry MacLean to A Scotsman Talks To. Garry, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for the intro there, Cal.
Excellent. Not a problem. I did get it right. You were in Winona Earp as well.
You are correct. Yes, I was in 2 episodes in season 1.
Excellent. Yes. Yeah, I had Brendan Hunter and a few other local guys on before, and I know you have all kind of done these similar sort of things because, when you're an actor in Calgary, you've got to jump on board these amazing local productions.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And to answer your other question, I am actually born and raised Calgarian. So
you are good.
Yes.
Yeah, I do as much research as I can, but the Imbida page doesn't sometimes tell me where people are from.
Right. Yeah, fair enough.
I am DB or BD or whatever it is. I love looking up because it's so weird. Some people it gives their height. Some people it gives like random bits of information. But yeah. So you are a Calgarian. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on. The story behind Garry coming on is actually a lovely one, folks. I was referred to him from a previous guest. You may remember the infamous pair, Drop Bear and Panda.
Awesome, folks.
Garry was looking for some information to help his show that he's been doing for a couple of years now. Is that right?
Yeah, a couple of years now. This is season 2.
And he was sent to me because I use this software for my show. So I converted him to the fabulous StreamYard software that I use, which is hopefully going well for you.
It is. I'm loving it so far, to be honest. Yeah.
Excellent.
I was trying to get away from the whole paying for the software type deal, but I'm finding this is well worth it. So.
Well, did you see the thing? You can actually have 10 guests now.
Yes, I did see that. I was like, oh, fantastic, right?
The challenge.
I'll just get all my interviews over in one day.
Yes, we're throwing down the gauntlet. I'm going to give it a go one night. I'm going to do an epic 10 guest session of mayhem. I don't think you can have them on at the same time, though. That's the only downside. I think you can have them build, but you can't have them all live. So maybe 3 at a time.
Gotcha.
But also Garry came on because I was having a little bit of communication issues with a few guests this month. The world's getting back to normal, people's lives. So I was kind of like, oh, can anyone be on standby? And this gracious gentleman was one of the people that stepped forward and said he would help out if. So Ryan last week, who was suffering and ill, who I will admit, has been tested positive now for COVID. So we're going to send our love to Ryan Adam Wells, my last guest. He wasn't sure if he'd be on. Garry offered to help out. So I said I'll get him on this week because he was being so good to help out. So that is the story to why this gentleman is our guest this week, mainly because I'm a lovely guy and I like meeting new people. And also, as I said in a previous show, I like getting guests on that I don't know personally as much. So it's quite nice to have that challenge of kind of going, okay, I have no idea how this is going to go. So, Garry, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, and what a great way to get to know each other.
Yeah. Well, this is actually the best thing to do, because I think the first thing to do would be to introduce yourself and tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely, I can do that. So as mentioned, born and raised Calgarian, lived here most of my life. There was a few times where we went between different towns, Edmonton, spent some time in Ontario, things like that. But yeah, I'd say 90% of my life is Calgary. When it comes to the whole acting side, I didn't really I did that in high school, didn't get back into it until much later in life, like 2011. I kind of got back into it. Lucky enough to get a chance to go on Heartland as a background actor, and
Yes,
that was kind of my
yeah.
yes, and that was kind of my re-intro back into the arts. And once that kind of happened, I spent 8 hours on set that day and fell in love with it. And I was like, I need to do this way more often. And yeah, from that point on, it was courses, workshops, networking, just talking to people, getting to know people.
Yeah.
And then it's going from being the background actor to, doing my own projects, right? Writing my own projects, producing them, attempted directing once, that kind of thing.
I like that. It's kind of like the way you say that is attempted, never again.
Yeah, I tend to say that. People are like, no, give it another chance. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Excellent. So, what's interesting, I like kind of what you were saying there, the passion you got into it, you tried it, you found your kind of calling here. I like the fact that you said that the networking, the running about, the making, because that's a huge part of what we do. It's kind of like, oh, network, chat, meet, talk, hope, pray. Oh, I like you. Let's collaborate, kind of thing. It's a part of the performance life, which again people don't often get to see. What I call the crazy mad dash for life.
Right. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Like, yeah. It's to me, it's an integral part of if you want to have any sort of success in the industry, right? It's just you have to meet, you have to talk to people of like minds and get ideas, and
yeah.
Hence, coming to you and getting your thoughts, and what I've already, in my opinion, enhanced my show just talking to you for a few minutes. So there you go, right? That's what it's all about.
I'm glad to help, and let's not make this all about me as much as it should be. No.
Sorry, that's my interviewer coming out.
Don't even try it, laddie. We're not turning the tables on this one. No, I was happy to help. I found this system has worked really well for me. So, and I came across it by chance, so I'm glad it is working for you. So, you are used to being the interviewer.
Correct.
So yes. I'm going to just immediately check, how are you feeling about this? I mean, how is this, this isn't even a normal question, but I'm just curious. I mean, how does this feel to have the tables turned on you?
It's a little different. Part of me is going, because, and you and I kind of talked about it before the show, is, we ask the questions and we let the guest kind of ramble and do their thing. And I'm not usually a rambler. So I'm sitting here going, okay, do I have enough stuff to say to keep this going? I just don't know. I'll play it by ear and see how it goes. So there's a little bit of nervousness there, I guess you could say.
Good.
Yeah.
No, that's okay. That's what I'm here for. If we stutter, trust me, my life is about talking. So I'll fill a bit of airtime until a thought process kicks back in. So, excuse me. My throat is a bit dry today. I'm in my little studio, and as I say to some of my guests, it's airtight, so it gets very warm very quickly. I will warn you, this is going to happen a lot where I suck on this straw, giving you intense eye contact. And the reason is simply because I don't like to look away from my guests. It just feels a bit rude, unless I'm going to cough or something. You don't want to have that splattering all over your mic or camera. But yes, just so you know, this isn't a seductive technique. It's not me putting you off guard. It's literally just me.
I am absolutely glad that you clarified that, because I was going to wonder.
I'm not giving you my sultry, smouldering eyes. I promise. So
mixed with the accent, I don't stand a chance.
You are of Scottish origin as well, you were saying, is that right?
I am. Sadly, I do a horrible Scottish accent, so I don't do my country proud, or my heritage proud, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Who is it in the family that was of Scottish? Who was from Scotland? Was it?
So it'd be my mother and then grandfather.
Oh, wonderful!
That side.
So
yes,
you're kind of a first generation in a way, then. Just
sorry, I guess I should say. Sorry, I guess I should. My grandfather was actually Scottish.
Right.
So second generation, I guess.
Second gen.
Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah. Well, in that case, please don't do the Scottish accent. Poor Brendan, to this day, I still think I may have damaged him slightly when he tried to do a Scottish accent in front of me, and I remember the moment on the show where I just went, "Don't."
Yeah.
And he just laughed. But because Brendan's accents are amazing. You've interviewed Brendan, you know exactly what he's like as a gentleman.
Yeah.
So to kick off the show, as I explained to all my guests, I work on a very simple principle. Being a storyteller, being raised and educated in storytelling, I thought about my questioning techniques and came up with a very simple formula known as the hero's journey. Now, the hero's journey is written by Joseph Campbell, and if you're unfamiliar with it, Star Wars is always the best example to give. And it's a very basic kind of circle of a story formula. I know the start to the end. Start to the beginning, I was about to say. Wow. The beginning to the end. So, any questioning needs to begin at the beginning, and any story needs to begin with your origin. Now, origin stories are huge at the moment. They really are. You know, we've been bombarded with them by Marvel and everything else. So the best way for my audience to learn more about you and find out the nitty-gritty about Garry is to give us a bit more about your origin story. And by that, I mean, you know, don't start with I was born, I was shot out, none of that. We don't need that gore, okay?
All right, well, there goes half my story, but yeah, go ahead.
But basically, by origin story, it's kind of like what got you to this stage? What brought you into performance? What were your inspirations? Was there any key moments? So if you can tell us a bit about all that. But if you want, start with the birth, if you really need to. If that
Well, if I'm gonna, fill in that gap at all, I'm gonna have to start there.
Okay.
Actually, forget it. We'll skip that. So I took drama in high school. Enjoyed it, but I wasn't nearly as committed as I probably should have been. And there's actually a lady in the theater community here in Calgary. Her name is Gail Whiteford, and she was actually my high school drama teacher in grade 11. And I remember doing a directing portion of the class, of which I failed miserably at, and funny enough, failed again later in life doing that. But
there is no failures.
Right, there's only learning, right?
Yes.
So what I found interesting is much later. So this was like aging myself, but 89-ish. Here we are, 18, I guess. I started doing auditions for my short film that I wrote, Yard Sale, and she auditioned for me. So it was kind of a full circle scenario. And she came into the right. It was kind of cool. So she walks into the audition room, and I'm like, I don't know if you remember me, but you taught me drama in grade 11. She's like, yeah, I remember you. I'm like, yeah, you failed me for my directing. And she goes, yeah, I remember that too. I said, oh, well, I deserved it. And she's like, oh, I know.
Nothing like honesty,
right? and she, to me, like, she landed the role. She was my first choice for the role. Um, but unfortunately, just due to family concerns and issues, she wasn't available during filming, so we had to go elsewhere. But it was just a funny antidote of full circle, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so again, going back to the high school side of things, I never really, once I finished high school, I never really went in anywhere into the art side of it. I started working right after high school, got into the whole streaming of the day to day working life, and
Hmm.
eventually made a family, raised a family, and like I said, then we come back to Heartland, and that was kind of the trigger for getting back into it. But just prior to that trigger, um, I actually went to an agency before they called me out to Heartland, because at that time my kids were a bit younger and I was still reading them stories, like nighttime stories and stuff like that. And they liked all the little voices I would use because I'd always change my voice depending on what the character was. And so I thought, oh, I think it'd be cool to be a voice on a video game or something, or cartoon. So I went to an agency thinking it would be that easy, and
Yeah.
said, "Yeah, yeah, sign me up. If you need somebody for some, voice work, let me know. I'm available." They did sign me. Yeah, that's a different story. And yeah, it was. I think it was the next day they called me, and I was actually at my day job. And they're like, "Well, we had somebody cancel for Heartland. We need a background actor in the next 45 minutes. Can you make it?" Went to my boss. My boss is like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And yeah, that was kind of where it all began for me. And that was where the passion was reignited. And then
Yeah.
yeah, in 2015 is when I kind of started delving more into my own personal projects and trying to develop my own stuff as well. So there was a 4 year span of just doing some acting stuff, indie acting and background and stuff like that, taking the workshops and stuff.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, I've done that. I'm comfortable with what I can do as an actor, but there's just not enough work here. So let's develop our own.
Yeah.
Right. That's where that started. So
And
that was
that
kind of my
that
journey.
that is actually that last point's a fantastic kind of uh element there, because that's something a lot of performers come across. It's like, okay, there's no work here. I'm not getting any gigs. So what do I do? And the answer that a lot of people don't realize is we just have to go and create our own.
Yeah,
We,
absolutely.
we literally need to sit and develop and find ways to put on our own shows, and hope that people will come to see them, or, we can get them created.
Yeah,
Y-
absolutely. And it kind of ties into the whole talent talk thing in that, very similar to yourself, is the reason I created it was to try, because there's so much local talent here and good talent, that I thought, well, we don't really have an outlet of, um, you know, representing these people and bringing these people to light. So, hence, I kind of created the whole talent talk concept. Um, it's not quite where I want it to be yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I watched some of the episodes, because embarrassingly enough, when I went to create this show, my original idea was slightly different. And one of my friends turned around and said, Calum, I was doing a live stream, and they're like, hey, you just literally plugged my show. And I'm like, oh no. Oh, so I changed it. And then after I changed it and set it up, I discovered, you know, after doing a few live, that you were doing this show and you'd done it a year or so before. And I was like, oh, but then I thought, well, you know, yeah, there's plenty of room. It's like every performance thing. There's plenty of room for different personalities, attitudes, and approaches.
Absolutely.
But we'll definitely get to talent talk a wee bit later, because that's a kind of key thing that you're really working on at the moment. That's one of your big drives and passions,
Yes.
from what I'm seeing. We actually have a question coming in.
Ah,
Do you find there's challenges getting work in this kind of industry when you start off in Calgary?
for sure. Like when I first started off, not knowing anybody, nothing. I was just the guy going, well, I want to do some acting. I don't know. What do I do? I was literally going through Kijiji ads. I was finding some film work there, people looking for actors there. Facebook is kind of where a lot of the networking started, I guess, because
Hmm.
there's so many acting groups and things like that. So that, connections like that, and once you get one or two started, they have their own network, right? And then it was just a matter of, okay, building off of that. Oh, you know this guy? What's he like? Oh, do you mind introducing me? That kind of scenario, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you're first starting off, it definitely takes, maybe a few months really to kind of build anything, any sort of network or rapport with a small group of people, right? So it's tough haul in the beginning, but if you're persistent, I think it's well worth it. I
Yeah.
hope that answers the question.
No, it does. And I can agree with that because, I came from Edinburgh. I had established business and walking tours and storytelling. Decided to pack it all up, move over here. And it was kind of like, oh, shit, I'm the new kid on the block again. And I know no one.
Right?
so so it's kind of like the networking aspect, I think, is very underplayed. Everyone thinks, going to classes, working hard, marketing, branding, getting the promos out there. But a lot of people do forget the networking side.
For sure.
And
Eh,
can I ask, are you skilled in networking? Because if you are, I need some advice. It's one of my weak points.
I'll admit it's one of mine as well. I almost have to consciously force myself to do it. It's not something I'm natural at by any means.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say, like, the whole background thing for Heartland or some of the other ones I've done, Fargo, things like that. That's also a good place to start your networking as well, because you're in a group of people that are of usually of the same mind as well, and they already have their connections and they've maybe been doing it longer than you have. Who knows, right? So it's not a bad place as well. I think sometimes background actors kind of get a bum rap, but I think
Mhm.
it's actually a really good place to start. Is
Cool.
my opinion, though.
Yeah, if Luke is watching, I don't know if he is, there's some good advice for Luke, who is trying to slowly break into acting and theatre and that. That's a bit of good advice for him to take. The background acting scene. It's not an area I've done. It's not an area I've ever been too keen on. I keep hearing the awful stories, and I don't mean that in such a negative way, that you mentioned it. You go there for 8 hours. You said it when you were chatting earlier. It's like you go there for 8 hours and it's a long, hard day. And
Yeah,
sometimes you're sitting about doing nothing. I mean, what are your experience of doing those kind of background sort of jobs?
yeah, and like I've been on sets like where I've been doing background for 12 hours, say,
Wow.
and you're really only in front of the camera for an hour out of that 12-hour a day kind of
Okay.
deal. So yeah, it can be a grueling haul, um, depending on the scenario. But I mean, at the same time, they have what's called holding, right, and where all the backgrounds in between cuts or whatever the case is, they put all the background people, and that's where the networking starts, right? Because
Yeah.
you're usually in amongst at least a half dozen people, usually more, and that's the great way to kind of break that ice, introduce yourself to a few people, and start to build that rapport in between takes and stuff like that. But what I actually really enjoyed about the background stuff more is the actual ability to sit back, watch the professionals at work, watch them tear down the scenes, reset them up on different angles, watch the actors. Although, granted, I'm supposed to be doing my own thing as an act, background. I'm still trying to keep an eye on what they're doing because that's where I'm going to learn. I find, right. So I think there's a lot of advantages to it.
Yeah.
But yes, long days can definitely be long days.
Long day. So you actually use it almost as a bit of work, but a learning tool as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
That is really interesting. Excellent. Okay. Well, that actually brings me to the next question, because you mentioned, you were doing the earlier days, you had your teacher who was basically, wonderful, who you tried to cast after she failed you. But a lot of performers, and not all performers, because, I've had some mixed reviews from this one. Me personally, I've interviewed, my mentor was on a few episodes ago, but I didn't. I've never stuck with one mentor, and I've never kind of done it for long. And Michael, my mentor, would say that as well. He likes to take different educational kind of elements from people. But is there somebody in your kind of development in your kind of performance career that has been an influence, that has guided you? Or is there a couple of people that have kind of been that kind of guidance, help, those Yoda people that just give you the words of wisdom?
Yeah. I mean, I think as a youth, she was definitely my biggest influence at that time. Um, because I mean, funny enough, I did all 3 years of drama in high school, but it was a different teacher for each year. So she only taught the grade 11, and then we had a different one from 10 and 12. And really, it's all her content that I remember. I honestly don't remember what I did in 10 or 12. So what she was presenting and what she was trying to teach stuck with me, and
Yeah.
it was yeah, it was a good learning experience that way. Of course, like I said, I went through such a long period of time where I had nothing to do with the arts, so there was no real influence then. Once I started doing my own stuff, I think is when some of the mentors kind of came back into the picture.
Hmm.
Um, for example, there's a um, especially when I started my very first solo project, of which I wrote and produced. There was the guy who directed it. His name is Mark Jelani, and he generally likes to um, stay low key, so he probably doesn't even want me mentioning his name, but that's all right. But right now he's out in Montreal, directing and writing stuff out in Montreal, and but he was definitely key in I think my development as a solo project developer, filmmaker. Um, and the interesting thing with that is uh, we actually met through his brother, um, and his name is Nafal. Uh, and again, small world. Myself, Nafal, Jen McLean, from Drop Bear and Panda.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all worked together on a theater project called Night of the Living Dead, based off the film. Um, and we were all zombies, and that's kind of where I met Nafal. And then that kind of transitioned to Nafal and Mark were trying to develop Pulp Fiction, the play, locally,
Okay.
and made a big production of it. I auditioned for it, got cast as Maynard. I don't know if you've watched Pulp Fiction or not, or remember much of it, but it was the pawn shop boys, basically.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so where Ving Rhames' character gets down into the
Okay.
basement, and yeah,
Yeah. It's been a long time since I've seen it. I'm trying to rack my brains.
yeah. So basically, I was the hillbilly, and at that point, I had much longer hair as well, so it suited it a bit better. Um, and that's where I met Mark. So it was kind of through that transition that I met Mark, and then I expressed my interest to Mark that I wanted to do my own projects, and he had already had a fair bit of experience with writing and directing previous films, and kind of took me under his wing for that project, my that first project, and learned a lot. So I guess I could say he was kind of instrumental in my build up to the indie world. Another fellow who kind of helped out with a couple projects as well, which I still go to for questions and things like that, would be Jason Therian. Not sure if you're familiar with him, but
No, I don't think so.
yeah, he's done quite well for himself. He's one of the co-owners of a company called Green Productions. They put out 2 or 3 features now, I think. Um, so yeah, he's been kind of instrumental in
Okay.
just somebody to consult, right, and get
Lovely.
some info from. So yeah,
So
I
that's
guess
that's the kind
yeah,
of mentors. That's the people that you seek guidance from, and me, of
yeah,
course. Now, no,
and you, of course, right? Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, yeah. One 2 minute conversation that cannot be classed as. No, that's excellent. Yeah, mentors are a very interesting thing because we have had a few guests that are very into them. Johnny Summers has had so many kind of mentors and influences, but then I had one guest who was like, "No, don't. I've done it all myself. I've forged my own path," which I think is also equally amazing. So
Absolutely.
it's nice to have that blend, and it's also nice to have those people to be able to fall back on. So I always think mentoring is a great thing for anybody coming up because basically it's that guidance, it's that little bit of help. It's good to do it on your own, but gosh, it's lonely. It is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lonely path. Now, just out of interest, because you mentioned a couple of things, we've talked about you doing kind of background stuff and you've done theatre. Can I ask what's actually your preference? I mean, and because that's a kind of very simple question, I'm going to add on to it. What's your preference, and what are the pluses and minuses to both sides?
I'd say my preference is film. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the advantages of film over uh, theater is, of course, you get multiple takes, right? You screw up your line, it's like, oh, okay, cut, let's do that again, right? Theater, if you're live on the stage, you mess up your line, it's either you got to save yourself or one of your castmates is saving your butt.
Yeah.
Um, and But at the same time, that's actually kind of the fun part of theater, I find, is that kind of spontaneity, and plus the fact that you get the crowd involvement, right? And I don't know if you've had this conversation with Jen McLean as well, but I know there's been times, even for myself, where you're there and you're expecting a certain reaction from the crowd from what's transpiring on stage, and you don't get it, and you're kind of like, "What the heck? What's
Yeah.
going on?" So you kind of have those thoughts in your mind as you're kind of doing things on stage as well. Um, I find, especially with theater, because you spend so much time with this group of people, I think you build up a stronger relationship than you might with somebody on film,
Mm-hmm.
um, because you are spending that extra amount of time, like usually months, right, of rehearsals and things like that, where you kind of build up those relationships a bit better.
Yeah.
Having said that, I have really done just a limited number of theater things. It's mostly been film. Um, and sometimes I get that itch, and every once in a while I'll go and audition for a theater project just because I'm like, it'd be fun to kind of do that again. So
I love
yeah,
it. So I like what you're saying there, because I'm kind of laughing to myself when you're saying, yeah, I like doing film because you get multiple takes. And I'm sitting here going, really? You don't get any second takes on this show.
yeah,
But
except the live ones, of
yeah,
course.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But the theatre, I do get what you're saying, that connection, that camaraderie. I've not done much theatre. I did a couple of early things and discovered I didn't like scripts too much. But I'm for a guy that memorizes stories and talks and emceeing and hosting stuff. When it actually comes physically to scripts, I'm terrible at trying to get them in my head. I mean, I get them, but I just go through a horrendous process. But I liked the comment you made about the audience. That intrigues me, because that is definitely something that in my early days I've been caught out with as well. And for anyone who's listening that hasn't experienced this, you're performing a piece, theatre, you're kind of, the punchlines, the emotion of the piece, and you kind of hit those lines, and then all of a sudden you realize your audience are just not there. They're just, it's like they missed it, or they just didn't fit in with the emotion. And it's a hard thing, isn't it, Gary? It's like you're
It
kind of
is.
like, you've got, your lines, and you've got this total beautiful thing, and you're expecting the laugh or the shock or the horror, and all you get is Stonewall.
Yes. Or the other one I find interesting is the one that you're presenting an emotional moment or something like that, and then you get the laughter. And you're like, that wasn't a laughable moment. Why are they laughing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there. It's kind of weird. As a performer, it throws you off. I'll be honest and say, my kind of performance, I've got the luxury of being able to adapt it. Um, but theatre must be really hard with that respects, because it's not as if you can go off script, because you're maybe dealing with another performer or multiple performers who are all waiting on that timing and cue. I mean, is that actually stressful? Because that's one of the things that I didn't like the feel of. The fact is, if you mess up by accident or let something slip, it can have a kind of a knock on effect. How do you get over that sort of side of things?
Um, eh, that's where if you have a little bit of an improv background, I think that helps.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't.
Oh,
So, um, I've been pretty good. Like I'm usually not too bad with the memorization of my lines, so it's not very often that I have made that mistake. But there was one occasion definitely where I did, and my mind just went blank. And luckily, it was who I was talking to that saved the scene, because I had just lost, and I was like basically just staring at this person going, ah,
oh yes. Yeah.
yeah. And then of course they picked it up and fed me a line that triggered my mind, and I was like,
Triggered it,
oh
yeah.
yeah, right, yeah, okay, now I'm back on track. Um, so it's definitely a harrowing moment for sure. Yeah, like because as soon as that kind of happens, and this was much earlier in my career as well, so I think it was a matter of just being green, and not realize or knowing how to react or save those kind of moments. Um, but yeah, once you kind of get that mentality in your head that I screwed up my line or I forgot my line, then you just really start to regress, and your mind just starts to get even blanker almost,
Okay.
where you're just like, okay, well, I remember absolutely nothing now. Who am I? Like,
And no, that's not stage fright. That is a whole different thing, isn't it?
yeah,
Um,
absolutely, yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, somebody's actually asking, so it kind of leads on. What tricks do you actually use to memorize lines in? And also, I'll add to that a wee bit. And how do you counter those moments of, you know the lines are in there, you've memorized them. How do you counter that if you have a blank?
Um, so again, with the theater side, it's you go through so many rehearsals and everything else that you don't. I think it's so ingrained in your mind. Usually, by the time it comes time to actually go on stage, that it's just muscle memory. So
Right.
in that case, it doesn't happen very often for me, just because, like I said, it's just a muscle memory. So it's almost me just saying the words without realizing I'm not even saying them anymore. Not quite, but
Yeah,
kind of.
I know what you're saying.
And but with film, especially when you're doing it for auditions and things like that, you have a much smaller time frame to memorize these lines. So, for example, as for the question of how I memorize, I actually saw a great little video that somebody shared on Facebook one day of you take your sides and essentially you read through it a couple times, just kind of get your mind around the idea of it. And then you basically just write the first letter of each word that's in your sentence with the punctuations and everything else if you've got periods and stuff like that. And it's just the first letter of each word. And then you just write all your lines like that. So once you read through it the first few times, and then you just more or less read it off the first letters, and your mind is going remembering what those words were just based off that first letter. And I
Cool.
found that was a really fast way for me to actually memorize the lines. It's weird how it works, but yeah, I was finding I could generally memorize, whatever, 5, 10 pages in, 30 minutes, 40 minutes type thing, right? Um, so it's definitely a handy little trick. Now, having said that, of course, you come to the audition, you're nervous, whatever the case is. Um, there, you're gonna have those moments for sure, and I have them all the time still,
Yeah.
where you do just screw up your line. Um, it's taking a lot of trial and error for me, I think, to um, be okay with the fact that you're forgetting the line, but don't forget what the context is. So
Hmm.
just get the words out that relate to the context, even though the lines might not be, or the words might not be exact.
Right.
Um, because chances are, whether you're in front of a casting director or doing a self tape at home, you're gonna get that second opportunity to kind of fix that, right? Like I've had that with a casting director where same thing, I forgot my lines or I've modified the lines just to get the context out.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, well, you screwed up a few lines there. That's fine. Let's give it another shot. Try it this way type deal, right? So it kind of lets your mind reset. So don't be afraid that it's going to happen. It will. It's just a matter of learning how to flow with it and just let your mind work with the content.
That's actually really good advice. I've never thought about it that way. You're portraying, you're getting the words out. It might not be the right words, but as long as you're putting the emotion and the imagery and what's there, that's actually that's a very good piece of advice for people trying to develop into any craft. I'm lucky I can just say anything, basically.
The bonuses of being live, right?
Yeah,
Script,
well,
who
no,
needs
it's,
it?
it's the bonus of doing storytelling as well, Gary. It's
Yeah,
fantastic because as long as you know your story, I mean, any audience member here that's seen me live knows that I never tell a story the same way twice usually, and most of the time I will forget or mess up on a word and just have fun with it. And
Yes. Yeah.
I have that luxury. Going back to the audience thing, if you get the wrong emotion from them, in my early days, it really threw me. But now I just kind of like talk to my audience, which you can't do if you're doing stage or TV. Or if you get a laugh when it's a serious story, you just start playing on that and developing the story slightly differently. So
Right.
I have the luxury, which a lot of performers don't have, sadly. So I'm very respectful of script work, script learning, and things like that because I have tried it. I tried to narrate a book recently, and oh my God, having not read the book for about a year, I discovered what a disaster that was.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I decided just to do it live on my Facebook page and the first chapter, and it was just like, oh no. This is awful. Jekyll and Hyde as well, using one of the strangest, most delightful books out there. So I have a lot of respect. Oh, another question come through. Does acting affect how you write? Sorry, I'll try that again. See, I can't even read things. I mean, I'm Scottish. They teach us to read only basics. Does your acting affect how you write? Like, are you more conscious of language? So basically, is your acting, it's like the screen or the theatre, does that affect your writing style? Because obviously you create some of your own. And basically, how does it make you more conscious of language? Because I think the way I'm interpreting that is it's always nice to be fancy with words, but sometimes it doesn't sound realistic. And sometimes it's a tongue twister for trying to get it out. So
Yes.
is that something that you kind of have experience with?
For sure. Yeah, and I'm actually currently writing my first feature script, um, and I'm struggling with that right now. So, um, so I'm very familiar with that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely do. When I am writing, I tend to try and write it as the character.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
So I,
right.
I, I do try to write it as I see that character saying it. Um, It's generally how I try and write. It still doesn't necessarily make it correct, or it still might be too wordy, or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's just even too simple. Or when it, especially if it's a character that is a bit more complex, right? I've been finding that as I go through this, I'm like, well, that seems very contrived. Just another word. Like, there's a lot of times where um, I'm almost trying to force the dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. So I am cognizant of it, and I do feel that the fact that I have done some acting has helped me be more aware of that. But it can also be a stumbling block,
Okay.
where I get too bogged down on it, and I'm like, "Well, geez, how can I make this sound more fluid or realistic or whatever the case is?" And then I hit a writer's block, and it takes me another
Right.
3 months to get back to it. And
No, I can understand that. Yeah.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah. Again, I'm not sure if that answered the question, but
No, yeah. To me, that's perfect. So this piece you're writing is it a theater or a TV?
It's a film,
Mm-hmm.
feature film. It's actually based off my short, yard sale,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I always had the intent of turning the short into a feature. So it was kind of a plan from day one. It's just, and I had the ideas in my head of how I wanted the feature to be and how I wanted it to look. But I'm finding as I progress that it's starting to change and be a bit more fluid in how I perceived it would be originally.
Excellent.
Um, yeah, I mean it's good, right? Because it's growth for one thing, and it's proving to me that the feature isn't as easy to write as I thought it would be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as long as there's a handsome, balding Scotsman in there, it's always going to work.
Right? Yeah,
Ah,
and it's kind of funny because I said to my wife, I said, I was talking about your show, and I said, because she actually wants to move to Scotland. We went there a couple of years ago,
right.
visited. She fell in love with it. She's like, we need to move there. Like, that's fine, but I need to learn the accent. Um, so I said, there's Calum that I'll be on his show. I said, what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to watch all his shows and use his accent to learn off.
That's okay. That's okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
My
that's the
accent
plan.
is a bit odd because I was born on the West Coast, so it can be quite gruff at times. But because I worked in Edinburgh, I had to soften and adapt my accent into a slightly bastardized version of what we call the BBC Scots.
Okay.
Which,
Yeah, yeah.
if you hear some Scottish people, they speak very softly. David Tennant would be a good example,
Yeah.
and it's basically so people can understand us, and so that they're not just sitting there going, "Why is there a human bear on my screen?"
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Because sometimes even I do it after a few beers. I get very growly without meaning to, and some people get very scared. I mean, I'm just a lovely guy, but so yeah, my accent's maybe not the best to work on, but I will advise you, neither is Sean Connery's, so please don't use his.
Right. Yes.
Nobody speaks like Sean. Love him to bits, but nobody speaks like him.
Just Sean.
And Gerard Butler, I mean, don't even go near his Scottish accent anymore. Jeez.
Yeah. Well, I do like David Tennant as well. It was kind of funny because you mentioned that because somebody was asking me. I was talking to somebody else about your voice, to be honest, and I don't know. I'm just talking about your voice. That's all I do
Oh,
nowadays.
just feeling so.
And they were asking me, they're like, "Well, is there another actor that you can kind of relate it to?" And David Tennant is the one I use as an example. So, um,
Oh gosh, yeah. No, David's voice is very soft, and he's a very eloquent speaker. In fact, he's bordering on, and if I ever meet him, he might beat me up. No, actually, he's so thin and frail. I could take Tennant.
yeah,
There we go.
exactly, right?
Tennant, there's a challenge. No, he's almost bordering on English sounding these days.
That's true. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but then he does so much Shakespeare, and he does so much of these kind of really eloquent shows now. Elegant. Sorry. Oh, sorry. And then he does a few dodgy ones. But he's the best doctor, so we'll never ever badmouth him.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and there we go. That's going to create a controversial argument at some point on this show.
You mention any of the doctors, and it's just going to create
yeah
an influx of questions and arguments, and
that's it. And basically, we'll have a argy bargy, and it'll be great. We'll be in there having a wee. Yeah. So yes, no, Scotland. I highly recommend it. Was it your grandfather? You said.
Yes.
So technically, you would be. Is it grandfather or parent? I can't remember. There's the immigration rule over there. I can't remember if it's parent or grandfather.
I can't remember exactly what it is either, but I just know I'm one generation off.
Oh, you are, Dash.
Yeah, because I was looking into that, and I was like, one generation off.
But you know what I'm going to say though, and this I'm basically trying to save you a bit of money here. Okay, Canada is Scotland. It's just bigger, and it has slightly more interesting weather conditions. Like, we don't get funnel clouds, and it has a lot more dangerous beasties. Okay? So that's how you basically say to your wife, you have a much more exciting, we have some beautiful stuff, but our mountains are like pimples compared to yours. Our weather is pretty much just dreich and damp most of the year. We have awful... Actually, no, Canada wins on the Awful Neighbour Award.
Yeah.
It used to be, I would always think that Scotland had the worst neighbours ever, but no, Canada has taken that medal, and basically, Canada has basically said, hold my beer, and set the oh, jeez. Yeah.
Hold my beer, look over here.
Yeah, God. Yeah. So, basically, Scotland is a lovely place. The only other downside is I was looking at this the other day because, me and my wife often joke about, well, maybe we should go back to Scotland. And I pointed out to the other day, I was like, do you want to lose half?
Yes. Yeah. And
it took it a couple of minutes, but yeah, the dollar to the sterling is so... like, it's something like 0.54, 0.59. So you're pretty much losing almost 50%. Well, not, you know what I mean. But you're losing a huge chunk of your money just moving to Scotland. So don't do it.
And even the rate of pay. for jobs there compared to here
Yeah.
is almost half again the other way. So you're almost losing like 75% really because
Yeah.
the pay is so
But
much lower. And yeah,
yeah. But you do have the history, you have the people, you
yeah,
have the amazing deep fried diet. It's all there,
yeah, yeah,
you know?
absolutely. And I think it's more the history that she would love the opportunity to just live there and then at her leisure just go around and visit the history. I think
Yeah.
is what the
There's a
yeah.
lot of that. That's one thing I do miss about living in Canada. Um, for any of the viewers that remember, I once had this wild idea of setting up a walking tour company in Calgary. Yeah, that fell through really quickly. But yes, let's move on. This is about you. Scotland, I highly recommend. Just keep visiting. Beautiful place, but you know what? Yeah, if you're a Canadian wanting to move over there, it's at the moment not worth it until they get maybe out of the I don't know, maybe if they do get their independence and get back into Europe, it might make a difference because they'll have their own monetary system then. But at the moment, the pound sterling is just a disaster.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, next question. Trials and tribulations. Every performer, actor, movie, whatever writer goes through it. Now, you did it in high school, you took some time off, and you came back into it. So let's look at the latter days. In your more recent experiences of writing, producing, acting, has there ever been a point where it's just gone so badly wrong, or it's just hit that wall that you've just been like that? No, this is not worth it. I'm out. Have you ever come close to that?
Yes, but not necessarily due to one specific reasoning. Um, and I talked to a few different actors about this, and I think it's actually a fairly common theme in that, especially here in Alberta, because there is so little work, we all tend to go through a lull of not finding an outlet for our artistic side.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's fairly common that a lot of us started to almost get into a depression or uh, a funk where
Yep.
we're like,
Yep.
I'm never going to get any work. Like, why am I still doing this? That kind of mentality, right? So you kind of get into that, unfortunately, lower level emotional state, and um, yeah, you tend to question why you're doing it and why you're there. I've had that on occasion. Um, I have had also my moments of walking out of an audition going, "What? Why am I doing this? Because that was a mess."
Yeah.
you know, um, I'll give you an example.
Please
I
do.
thought for sure that the local casting director was never going to bring me into her room again because of this little fiasco that I did. I got an audition from one of my agents, and she, when I looked at the sides, uh, I looked at it on my phone, and all I could see was 2 pages. And for Alberta, Calgary, that's a fairly typical audition is a couple pages of dialogue, and off you go, right? Sometimes
Hmm.
1, 2 lines. So I went to my audition, did those 2 lines or those 2 pages, and we finished that scene. And then the casting director's okay. Well, let's move on to the next scene. And I kind of looked at her and said, "What other scene?" She goes, "Well, we've got 3 scenes to do today." So I had actually 6 pages of dialogue, which I didn't realize I had until I actually left, went back to work because I did it over my lunch break type thing, and brought it up on my computer, and then I saw the 6 pages. And as I read it, I was like, "Oh, this is such a phenomenal part." Like the first couple pages weren't that great, wasn't that
Hmm.
interesting. But the rest of it, I was like, "Oh, this would have been such a fantastic role."
Oh no.
But yeah, she looked at it. She's like, "I don't have time to sit here and wait for you to go, memorize your lines. I've got other people waiting. Like, you're either gonna have to come back later, or we're just gonna call this done." And it ended up being done. Um, and I thought for sure that was the end of my career here. Um, so I immediately, once I realized what I had done, I sent her an email and just said, "Hey, apologies, didn't mean to waste your time. That was on me." Um, and yeah, I think it was 1 or 2 weeks later, she brought me back for a different audition. So I was like, "Oh, thank God."
Nice.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
we
there's
do have most moments.
something to be said about owning up for your mistakes, isn't there?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just that kind of guy. Like I'll definitely own up to whatever I
Yeah.
did. So
Oh yeah, it's I've discovered a key to anything in this world now, and it's kind of a weird thing, but it sounds so normal, is just to be human.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the amount of
Right.
people that forget that simple lesson, just be human, be who you are, be honest, and if you've screwed up, just say, "Yeah, I ballsed up." You
Yep.
know, and it actually goes a lot further than most people think, because I don't know if how many you've encountered, and obviously will not mention names, but one of the things that I find a lot in a lot of the performance community, and I'll have some of these people on my show no doubt in the future, is there is a little thing called ego. uh,
Yes. Ego.
uh,
Yes.
and it does, when you encounter it, sometimes it does take you by surprise. Have you had any without mentioning names, because obviously we don't want to be those people, but have you had any particular encounters over your time with just an ego that you could not actually believe existed?
I think for the most part, I've been fairly lucky with that. I mean, most of the people I've worked with have really been great. Um, there's one guy that definitely had some ego to him, but I don't think it was on the extreme level. Like he definitely thought fairly highly of himself. I think I only really worked with him on one project. Um, but yeah, so to me, it didn't have much of an impact on me, I guess. So yeah, I don't have a lot to say on that one, to be honest.
No, no, that's good. Yeah, no, I mean it's just one of those things
But
that we've all
I have heard
encountered them.
stories.
We all have those moments
Yeah.
where we've met them, and I don't know how to deal with it when you come across it. It's a strange thing. But moving on, talent talk, your
Yes.
major project, I would say at the moment. Would that be right?
It seems to be my main focus right now. Yes, it's
Yeah,
pulling from all my other little projects at this point. Yeah.
yeah. So tell us a wee bit about talent talk.
Uh, yeah. So as mentioned a little bit earlier, it was kind of stemmed from the fact that there's just so much local talent here that I thought needed an outlet to present themselves. Um, and so the first season that we did, I actually did out of the basement of the fellow who was filming them, and we had a three-camera setup in his
Wow.
basement, a green screen in the background, and um, yeah, so I had actually was doing 6 interviews in one day. So I would book from 8 o'clock in the morning, and we'd finish around 3 or 4, and just one right after the other interview. So people were rotating in for that day, and then we would release it one episode every. I can't remember if it was every week or every 2 weeks, but something like that. Yeah. So the first season, that's all that was, and so
Right.
in the green screen, um, we ended up putting a brick wall, which when people go to the website there, they'll see a brick wall right on the website. And that was the brick wall we used as our green screen background. It's kind of become a staple for the show. So that's why I kind of keep using it, because there was
Yeah.
one episode, the last episode of season one, where we didn't end up using the brick wall just because of the masking issues we were having with our last guest. Just couldn't get the coloring right and everything else.
They came
Their
in a green suit, didn't they?
It's no, it was actually the hair. It was the hair
Oh.
that was doing it. So we had changed it from a green screen to a blue screen. So they were wearing a lot of blue for one thing, and then the hair was you couldn't filter it properly because it was kind of a frizzy hairstyle.
All
So
right.
it was either the blue would come through or you would have a halo, and we just couldn't get rid of it. It looked weird, so I decided no, let's screw it. Just leave it without the wall. Just leave the background in it. It was fine. But we actually had some people comment going, "Where was the brick wall? Like, what was this episode? Where was the brick wall?" So
Wow.
kind of became a staple, and I
Yeah, forget the talented people
yeah,
talking. Yeah, all you're doing is counting bricks.
right.
Seriously?
I mean, it was usually as a joking question, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely. So I thought, oh wow, I might as well keep it in there, and yeah, it's part of the website now, I guess. Um,
Cool.
so the second season, of course, I had put the show on hiatus at the end of 2019. because I was trying to expand it in a way where I wasn't doing 6 episodes a day. I wanted to do like an actual live in-room interview. But I would have needed more funds than I had personally to make it work.
Yeah.
So I kind of put it on hiatus, tried to raise some money. Wasn't happening. COVID hit, um, and it actually was kind of a benefit that in that regard because it actually allowed me to do what you and I are doing right now.
Yeah.
So that's where the season 2 kind of kicked in. It's like, oh, well, I can do this live, like we're doing. Um, so that's how the second season kind of started. My end goal is to not only eventually start interviewing people across Canada.
Hmm.
Right now, it's mostly local, but I still do want to do the live in-person interviews on stage, like between two ferns or whatever the case is, or like a
Yeah.
comic expo type scenario, right? Um, Obviously, I'm not as funny as two between two ferns, but
Between Two Ferns is brutal at times. It's
it
so good.
is, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but that kind of style is what I'm hoping I
Yeah.
can eventually get to with Talent Talk. And right now, we're also offering our services for folks if they have red carpet events or some street events. We'll go and we'll interview folks or whatever the case is. And we did a few of those as well as part of our season 1. On the website is where we did festival interviews at the Calgary International Film Festival and interviewed for people that had their films previewing there and stuff like that on the red carpet, and it was fun. It was actually a different style of interviewing than what you and I would be doing right now.
Hmm.
I was so different. I wasn't really quite prepared for how different it was.
In
Because
what respects?
so mostly in the fact that, for example, when you and I are talking, or if I'm talking to another guest, I know I've got a certain amount of time and I can be fairly casual about my questions and
Yeah.
my leading points and things like that. Whereas you're on the red carpet, you have a limited amount of time that you get to talk to these people. So you got to rattle out whatever main questions you have in your head, and try and get them on their way without messing with their schedule too much. Right. So yeah, I just felt it was a bit more rushed. And
Yeah, I can imagine.
yeah, it took a bit more. It probably would have been better if I had a bit more forethought and prepped questioning going in, but with a lot of them, I didn't. I was just flying by the seat of my pants. Went up and said, "Hey, how you doing? Hey, you got this film? Hey, let's talk about that. Tell me about it."
Yeah.
So it was all kind of fly by the seat of my pants and challenging at times, but at the same time, I did enjoy it. Um, and yeah, so right now I have it titled as Talent Talk Media. The It's kind of the corporate name, if you want to call it that. It's not
Yeah.
obviously not registered or anything at this point, but um, and that's where I kind of want to go with it, is make it more of a media um, outlet, sort of. Do those interviews, do those
Yeah.
one-on-ones, do this kind of thing, and expand beyond, and make it grow a little bit that way. That's the end goal for the whole project.
Excellent. So, what's the you're interviewing talent?
Mhm.
I kind of want to let the world know about this because it's important that there are more of these sort of things out there, and you've been doing this a wee bit longer. So you're interviewing people, you're getting them in. Who are you interviewing? What's your process of selecting people to interview?
So right now, a lot of it's based on my current network, and so a lot of it's film related at this point.
Hmm.
The show itself is meant to be more encompassing of the entire arts and media field. So that could be anybody from musicians, which, by the way, I've got somebody lined up. My first musician, I think, lined up for end of August,
Lovely.
um, and could be models, could be painters, sculptors. I want it to be more encompassing, all encompassing. I've actually got a fellow who teaches at the Alberta College of Art, that I want to get on the show as well, because that's
Nice.
what he's teaching, is the actual painting side of things, and I want to get him on the show and bring that to light a bit as well. So it's meant to be more encompassing, but right now it's been more focused on the film side for sure.
Hmm.
Film, voice acting, that kind of thing, um, theater,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's where it's focused right now, but the intent is to expand beyond that.
Excellent. Excellent. And you're now in your second season, and obviously, COVID has made life a little bit more challenging, but it's allowed us to develop this because, that's exactly how I came around this. My idea was to have people here, but, learning technology and getting it done, it seems to make the difference. And actually, I quite like this format. I don't know if my studio would fit two people comfortably and be breathable because it becomes a sauna. So I
Right.
love working with this kind of medium as well. I like the fact that you've got your plan. I like the fact that, yes, you're doing your chat show idea, but you want to take it. You've taken it a wee bit further, but you want to progress it. Is this an avenue you would actually like to kind of really focus on and develop as your permanent avenue? Or are you one of those people that still likes to have fingers in pies?
I definitely do like to have fingers in pies. I mean, my main focus is still acting. I love acting. I love being in front of the camera, um, being a performer, not just a host. Nothing against being a host. It's just it's not where my main passion is. But I feel this is a I feel there's a lot of potential for the show, and
Yeah.
I feel that if I do apply the right attention to it, that it can expand and grow decently. Um, like there's a there was 3 episodes we did last year where I actually had my first guest as a guest host. So he
Oh,
actually hosted the show for me for the last 3 episodes of the first season. Um, and his name is Chinggis Javari. I don't know if you've met him or heard about him, but
no, I don't think so. No.
he's a fellow you'd probably want to get on your show. He's pretty much been on every independent movie I think in Calgary. That's kind of our
Okay.
running joke with him. So um, yeah, he's definitely he's a funny character. He's charismatic, and that's part of the reason I brought him in to kind of do some guest hosting. And he even did a couple red carpet interviews for me as well.
Excellent. Well, in that case, I'll get you to make the what's the term I'm looking for?
The introduction.
Yes, that's the one I'm looking for. See, words. I do this for a living. Words. Yeah, please make the introduction for me. I'd love that. Thank you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No. Yeah. He's great. I love working with the guy, and um, yeah. No. I'll definitely make that introduction for you.
Yeah.
He's
So
he's a good
basically, what I'm getting here, though, Gary, is we have a bit of a problem
fella.
because we are at some point now going to have a bare chested knife fight like over our talk shows. You know,
Yeah.
we're
Absolutely.
basically at war with each other. Uh,
Maybe we should just go to a caber toss. How about we just do that?
do you know how difficult that thing is?
Yes.
I watched a show with the world's strongest men, and they nearly all lost their teeth trying to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I jest, of course. As I've said, there's so much room for these sort of things. But yeah, I love the fact that you're doing it, and I'm part of me feels guilty that I started one up and without realizing that you had one organized.
Oh yeah.
But
No. No.
we have different guests as well. We've shared some guests,
Sure.
but I'm kind of focusing. I've got a big sort of fringe network of people that I work with, and so a lot of my guests probably won't be as intellectually established, for example, like lecturers and teachers that you've been working with and are hoping to get on. I have this wonderful eclectic performance community that I just kind of hopefully grab, and some of them are incredibly educated and some of them are not. I don't know if you've met Johnny. No, I'm not saying that
No,
man is so educated, it's ridiculous.
but that's the
you know,
great thing, right, about us both having a similar show is
yeah,
that it does allow us to kind of reach that broader audience and
it certainly
bring in those
does.
wider range of guests, right? Yeah, no, I think it's brilliant that we're
Yeah, I've
kind
got a
of
feeling we'll be cross-pollinating guests as well at some point. I'll be like, hey,
sure,
hey, do you have someone? And do you have some? Just
absolutely. No, I
get the
agree.
variety going on the shows. But that's
Yeah,
great. Well, this has been great. I've really enjoyed this, Gary, because this is a very different insight for my viewers. Because you do a lot of, you have done the performance, but you're also kind of doing something very different from my normal guests. So I'm
okay.
really liking the fact that we have something in common that we can talk about.
Right.
So you mentioned though that you're not as passionate about interviewing.
Yeah, and I think that actually stems more from the fact that I don't feel I I have the correct charisma to be the host. I think it's more of an internal thing more than anything. Like I've had this conversation with some folks that have watched the show outside the arts field in
Yeah.
general, and they're like, "Well, no, you're fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with the way you interview." I think it's just more of an internal thing where I just don't feel I have the right persona for interviewing.
Could it just be the passion? Because I'm a firm believer in, you know what's right. Your passion is towards the movie, acting, and theatre, and you enjoy doing your hosting, but it's not 100% your passion. Rather than that you don't enjoy it, it's just not your full passion.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. Sure.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm only saying that because I don't want to make it sound negative that you don't enjoy doing your show. But it's like I've actually discovered that doing this is a huge passion for me. I mean, I love doing my live shows and my storytelling. But if I could actually move into this field and, because I do emceeing and hosting of events, but if I could move into more this strongly and create a career around this sort of field, I would be happy because I actually love the communication with people. I love chatting. And as we had our pre-show chat, I would love to get more nitty-gritty with people,
right.
As I mentioned to you, we won't go into fully that, but if you get a problematic guest, I am
Yes.
not going to cut them off. I'm going to let them go, and they better damn well be prepared to have me challenge and question and prove their point of view, basically, and go for it. Even if it's a controversial point of view, I'm gonna get them to air it on live, question them. I might not agree with it, but as long as they can put an argument together, they'll make a guest. That's
Yes.
my
Yeah.
opinion. Of course, I'll shoot them down in certain ways, but I will never close down an episode unless it gets too ridiculous. I love this. So it's kind of weird because we're both doing the same thing. Your passion's in your original field. My passion is now moving from my original field into this newer field that I'm really enjoying. And it's I think life's great with performers. We just adapt and evolve, as you
Yeah.
have done yourself over time. I mean, what future projects have you got other than the one you're writing? Is there anything else that you're driven and passionate about to get out there?
Well, there's a couple things I tried to start online as well during this whole COVID thing,
Yeah.
which unfortunately never really took traction. But I was trying to start a storyline of it's almost like so I filmed a scene,
Mm-hmm.
um, just a scene I made up, short 30-second, 45-second type scene, and then I passed it on to somebody else, and they would build off of that scene and create their own scene based on what I did,
Great idea.
and then it would kind of move along to another whatever 6 to 12 other people, and we would see how that story ended up once it's kind of all cut together, right, and see if we could actually create a chain story, if you
Lovely.
want to call it
Yeah.
that. Unfortunately, it didn't quite take the traction I was hoping it would, but it's not dead. But yes, it's definitely not quite alive either.
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. A lot of
so there's
ideas
that.
during.
There's some other shorts that I want to kind of put together.
Yeah.
Right now, I think the shorts are just the quickest way to get a project out and get that artistic side going. I would like to do more for the feature. Again, with Talent Talk, it's been pulling my attention a little bit from writing the feature, but at the same time, it's also part of the writer's block that I'm currently having as well. So
Yeah.
I was actually hoping to have this script done before the new year, even. So it's been kind of dragging on a lot longer than I wanted it
Yeah,
to.
but I mean, again,
Um,
that could be a COVID thing because I tried a few projects during COVID. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. But I also find, and if you're trying to write something, it may be the same thing. Communicating with friends has become, I'll use the word mundane, and not because of the friends, but because we don't have much to talk about. What did you
mm,
do today? Well, I scratched my nose. I made a cup of tea. I watched a cloud because we're not getting out there. We're not seeing the world, and we're not having those experiences. So maybe that's what's affecting your writing as well. You're kind of not having the worldly life that we're used to.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I could totally see that for sure. Um, I do want to touch back on your whole thought on the passion for talent talk.
Yes,
Uh, I agree that my passion for the actual hosting might not be 100%, but definitely the passion for the project itself is top.
fantastic. Yeah,
So I think that's what it is. I think it's a matter of, and then maybe that's because going psychological now. Um, that might be why I even invited Chingaze in the first place to host those 3 episodes, is I felt he'd be a better fit as a host, and then I could kind of work on it from behind the scenes and help
yeah.
build it that way. Um, and it's kind of interesting because I have had different feedback about his interviewing style and mine. So it's kind of interesting. I don't really want to go into the details on some of the conversations we had, but
Hmm.
it was different. It was not quite what I expected to hear, and so I'm still kind of a fork in the road of how I want to approach it, I guess.
No, no. Everyone does it. Everyone does things differently, you know. I'll be brutally honest, one of the reasons I started this show up was to try and develop that aspect because it's not something I had done, you know. So everyone does things differently. You know, I'm still learning this interviewing thing and, and yeah, not stumbling over words. So everyone's very different and unique at it. And some people love you and some people don't, you know. So, but the thing is, it's your show.
Yeah,
So maybe people are, you know, if you're branding it, you are the face of it, so people will probably expect to see you on it, sort of thing, you know.
yeah,
So it's one of those challenges, you know, that we all face. It's trying to work out that balance. Do I want to be in the background? Do I want to be in the foreground?
yeah, absolutely. No,
Yeah,
I agree with that for sure. But yeah, no, we'll see where it takes us, and we'll keep trying to build up on it, and yeah, go from
fantastic.
there. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to new episodes. Now you've got an episode coming up
This
this
Saturday.
weekend.
Yeah, yeah. New
Who's
up.
your guest? Can we ask?
Sure. Her name is Megan Renault, and she's a uh, actress, stunt woman, and has delved in a little bit of the MMA fighting. So yeah, she's done some of the cage fighting that goes on there.
Wow.
So yeah, it'll be an interesting conversation. I think I've had one other stunt woman on my show in the first season, but I always find it fascinating to hear their stories of being on set and the certain the kind of stunts they go through and the rigging that they have to deal with and everything else. I
Yeah.
just find that quite fascinating. Um, Unfortunately, I think I'm too old and my bones are a little too brittle to get into that side of things, or else I might think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a hard life, isn't it? Doing the stunt stuff. So
Yeah, for sure. But no,
yeah.
it'll be a good show. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah,
Good.
so my original plan was to have an episode every 2 weeks, um, and having that open week has kind of given me the flexibility that if something's happened that we need to reschedule, I can usually fit in a reschedule in between shows. So I do, like, for example, I've got the next 3 weekends booked, and then I have a
Right.
weekend off. So it's given me a little bit of flexibility. Plus, I am trying to work on some larger name Canadian, talent. Trying to get them in on the show, and having that open time period gives me a little bit more flexibility to maybe bring
Yeah.
some. I don't want to say special guests, but
Oh yeah, I'm trying
different
to hunt
guests.
down Barry Manilow,
Uh,
but he just doesn't respond to me.
yeah, he's just ignoring
Oh,
everything. I
I
don't know
know,
what's
how
up with
rude of
that.
him. You know? Jeez. You know, I often quite fancy reaching out to Gerard Butler actually. I met him in a bar in Edinburgh and I'm
Oh,
kind of like
nice.
almost thinking, now if I could just find a way to contact him, say, hey, it's the guy you met in the bar like 6 years ago in Edinburgh. I just think that'd be a great intro to see if he actually registered.
Right? Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I've been to a lot of bars in the last 6 years.
Yeah, yeah. In
Which one?
Scotland, particularly. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, Gary, let's move on. Let's hit you with our 10 silly questions. Now, are you ready for this?
All
These
right.
are questions I ask my audience to send in. They are random, they're silly, but if you've watched the show, you'll know the questions. And this is the test that I have for all my guests. It means you haven't watched any shows because you don't know the questions. And I expect that. that my guests won't actually watch the show, so I can keep asking the same silly 10 questions. Under no circumstances is this a psychological experiment, and no one will kick in your door after you have answered these questions. You have my word.
All right.
Right.
Feel better now.
Okay. Are you ready?
All right. Let's do this.
What's your favorite kitchen utensil and why?
I'd say the can opener just opens up such a variety of food options. Yeah,
In the canned
in the
format.
in the can format.
Because, I mean, I can't see it be very useful for a plastic container.
No. I mean, I've tried using the plastic knives to open the cans. It just doesn't work as well.
No, you're right. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Someone's asking, did you direct Sex Therapy?
Yes, that was my directing
Apparently,
debut.
it's a hit in Australia.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah. Somebody's just popped on now, Morag. She's basically saying she came in a bit late, but is Garry the director of Sex Therapy? Googled his name and came up with this. It is a hit here in Australia.
I find that surprising.
No, I think it's time to move to Australia if you're willing to die from everything.
Absolutely. No, it's another project that I wrote, produced, directed, acted in it. It was just a short 5-minute film. It's not one I really share with people. It's one of those films where I kind of like, okay, it was an experience, but nobody really needs to see that.
Okay, sorry if I just let a whole open Pandora's box there.
But it is kind of interesting in the fact that I have, for example, if you go onto IMDb, I don't know if you have IMDb Pro or not, but if you go into
I just have the basic.
Yeah. So if you were to go into IMDb Pro, you could see like the rankings of all these movies and everything else. Out of all the films that I have that are my own projects, it's always had the highest star rating. If you want, I think that's what it's called. Out of my projects, like I think it's been as high as 20,000 out of I don't know however many films are out there in the world. Whereas on average, my other films are around 200 to 800,000, right? So there's I'm kind of surprised it's always been at that level, and I have had some like I have had some feedback on it, because it is available on YouTube. It's not private or anything, but I don't make an effort of showing people it. So it's interesting that came up.
Well, yeah, sorry about that. I didn't mean to throw that.
Oh no, it's fine.
You know, but you're a hit in Australia, man. You're international.
That's perfect. I don't even care what film it makes it. It's fine.
Okay, back to the silly question. Oh, you're stuck in an elevator with one person. Who is it?
One person. Well, man, my answer would have been different before, but I'd say right now, be an actress by the name of Yvonne Strahovski.
Not familiar.
She's probably more recently known as, or on the show, a bridesmaid, or not a bride. The oh my God, why is the name escaping me? The Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, I've never seen that, sadly. I've heard so many good things and just haven't got around to watching it.
Fair enough. So she's been known on that show. She was also in a series called Chuck, that had Zach Levy in it, and she was the
Recognize that name, yeah.
Yeah, she was the female lead in that one. She's from Australia, funny enough, and she really caught my eye on Chuck because she was always like her emotions were strictly in her eyes. Like you could see everything she was kind of feeling just through her eyes, and that always kind of intrigued me that she had that talent. Right, she didn't have to act anything. You could just see what she was feeling, whether it was being happy or being sad or whatever the case is. You didn't need any dramatic music to help enhance it. Nothing. You could just see it. And I just think she's an amazingly talented lady. And yeah, it's kind of one of my personal goals to eventually either work with her or interviewer, one of the two.
Fantastic. No, let's make this happen. Right, we'll get that
Right?
out there. We'll buzz it. Okay, what's the worst job you've ever done?
Worst job I've ever done. Um, Probably be my first job out of high school, to be honest. Worked for a industrial cleaner called Rosedale Cleaners. You've probably seen similar companies like Cintas or Canadian Linen driving trucks around town.
Okay.
Essentially, they did industrial cleaning of shop clothes, like the mechanic shops, the uniforms they wear and stuff like that. We'd wash those. We'd wash floor mats. We'd wash these printers rags, which that was the worst part of the job, is because you had all these inks and chemicals in these rags that you had to put through the washer. I lost my sense of smell for like a year after I quit that job, just because of that
Wow.
scenario, because it was just so toxic. So yeah, I'd say that was my worst job.
Okay, that's your worst job. I like it. Okay, why did the chicken cross the road?
He wanted to get to the middle to figure out where the egg was.
Simple. I like it. Pineapple on a pizza, yes or no?
No,
No?
no, flat out no. But
Barbarian.
my wife and I discuss this all the time because she's a definite yes. So we actually order, like, if we order a pizza, we usually go a half and half, and it'll be half Hawaiian and half whatever the heck I'm
Yeah.
having.
You see, I love pineapple on a pizza, but I always have black olives on it.
Yeah, see, neither of us care for the olive side of it.
Yeah, and I actually watched a show recently, and one of the stars orders ham, pineapple, and black olive pizza, and they were called a barbarian. They were called a beast for doing such a thing to fine food.
I do find a lot of the comments and the battles, the pizza battles, kind of
Yeah,
comical about the whole pineapple on
yeah.
the pizza.
It's like chicken and sweet corn. Great pizza.
Yeah, right.
Love it. Okay. How do you feel about garden gnomes?
Garden gnomes. I'm kind of impartial, but definitely not opposed to having them around.
Okay,
I
excellent.
know a lot of people are creeped out by them, but yeah, I'm okay with them.
We've got a giant one down the road that keeps catching my eye when I'm out walking the dog late at night. And during the day, he's fine, but at night, he just looks sinister.
Right?
You know?
Yeah, he's got that shading. It looks like he's following you as you walk. Yeah,
He's
yeah.
up to no good. Up to no good. Okay. Who would play a biopic of you in your life?
A biopic of me. Oh, let's see. Um, oh, his name is escaping me. Frodo Baggins. The heck is his name?
Elijah Wood?
Yeah, that's it. Elijah Wood. There we go.
Okay. Can I ask why?
I don't know. I figured I don't know. I figure if once he's a little older and more my age, I think he'll start to look a bit more like me.
Okay. Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. I can see that. Uh-huh. Okay.
Actually, when I was younger, I was actually everybody, I would walk into restaurants and people would ask if I was Michael J. Fox. When I was younger and much thinner. But yeah, I don't know why. I never saw it myself, but
No. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Says a not bad person to look like.
Oh yeah. No, I was okay with it. I should have played up on it a little bit more, I think, is what I should have done. Got a few free subs or something along the way.
Get some freebies going.
Right? Exactly.
What superpower would you want, and would you use it for good or evil?
Probably teleportation. I think it would be mostly for good, because I would just like to travel all over the place, and it'd be great to just get there instantaneously.
Nice.
Kind of a boring answer, I know, but yeah.
No, it's good. It's fine. It's fine. I've only had a couple of people who have admitted they would use it with their power for evil.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, most people are saying good. People are playing it safe.
I'm trying to think how I would actually use teleportation for evil. I mean, I guess I could be a creeper or something and like teleport
Or
into
rob things.
Yeah. Oh yeah, into the bank vaults and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that would work too.
Why did I immediately think of that? I don't know. I mean,
why did I automatically think creeper?
yeah,
that's my bigger question.
I lied about them kicking in your door. Okay.
FBI is outside right now.
That's it. No, where are we? Where are we? Okay, one of my favorites. I like to hear this one. What is your musical artist guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure. Hmm. That's actually a really tough one. Because I have a very select um, range of music that I listen to.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's mostly, you know, 80 or 90s grunge type stuff,
Yeah, good
heavy metal
stuff.
stuff. Nothing crazy. Um, Geez, I'm really struggling to think of that one.
Well, let's ask this. Do you have a sneaky Nickelback album in there that you don't want people to find?
No, I purposely did not get any Nickelback. Um, no, yeah, I kept away from that one. Oh, I guess, okay, I guess I got one. Band called Hollywood Undead. Hollywood Undead.
Okay,
They're kind of, I don't even know how to describe them. Um, they're a little bit rap slash heavy pop in
okay.
a way, which is a bit out of my genre, I think, for the most part of what I
Yep.
generally listen to. So I guess I could say that. Um, yeah, Google them. They're kind of weird, a weird
Okay.
group. They wear
Um,
masks all the time, and
nice. Our most bizarre one was actually Frank D'Ambrosio, the opera singer, who loves French rap.
oh, okay.
And most people that I've said that to are like, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh, there's rap in everything.
Yeah.
You can go
But
anywhere
I
and
think
find rap.
most people find it hard to get the idea of French rap.
Like I think I've heard some French rap out of Quebec, so
That's not French.
well,
No,
fair enough.
sorry.
Fair enough. No,
Okay, we're going to start a war on this show.
actually, yeah. I actually it was kind of funny because I did a murder mystery show last year, I think it was, where I played a French chef, and so I had to use a French accent. And one of the people at the end of the show, like one of the guests that were in the show or watching the show, came up to me after the fact, and they're like, "I'm really so happy you didn't go with a Quebec French accent. I'm glad you went with like a France French." I'm
Yeah.
like, to be honest, I didn't even know I was doing that. So-
Well, it's the only reason I always joke about the French is because of the old Scottish French connections with what was known as the Old Alliance, where they let us down every time. So I am well known for going off on my rants about the French every so often in a loving way. You know, I
of
always say it in a
course,
loving way.
of course, yeah.
Maybe, maybe. No, yeah, I do. I do. Okay. Last question. You're in a bar enjoying a drink. All of a sudden, someone starts hassling you, and you know you're about to get in a fight. What is the theme music that starts playing in your head?
Oh, what's the title of it? Kung Fu Fighting. Yeah,
Kung Fu. Going on an old classic there.
an old classic one
And do
there.
you
Yeah.
know Kung Fu?
I do not. So it
Right.
would just be a jungled mess of a good song and bad moves,
But you see, you might throw them because as soon as they hear that, they're like, oh my God, I'm up against someone who knows Kung Fu.
right?
And it could just give you enough time to run away.
And I'll just look like I don't know, a chimpanzee on acid or something, with just arms flailing all over the place. And
I think people would pay money to see that at the Fringe.
fair enough. Yeah, that could. Yeah, that might be another avenue I could look at.
Gary, on that note, that was wonderful. I love that image that you've just given us there. We're going to wrap this up. I want to thank you very much for being our guest this
Oh,
evening.
thank you for
The
having me.
last question I ask every guest, though, is this. With your experience, with everything you've gone through with as a performer in the various fields, writing, producing, directing, is there any advice that you could give to somebody coming into the industry? What I'm kind of asking is put yourself in Yoda's shoes. Give those words of wisdom to help somebody coming into this industry.
Without using the Yoda voice,
Please, please. It's okay.
I don't want to insult Yoda that way. I think it kind of goes back to what we were touching on earlier in the show, and it's just get out, meet, talk to people. it's key, I think, to build that rapport and group of people. Um, to me, that's the only way to kind of develop
The networking.
the networking.
Yeah. That was actually an incredibly good bit of information, though. I mean, so overlooked. We've had lots about training and development and voice work but a lot of people forget the simple networking.
Yeah,
Sometimes, as awful as it sounds, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
it is, and it can also be a struggle, especially if you are like I consider myself an introvert. Um, to force yourself to do that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and if you are an introvert, you do kind of have to force yourself to do it, unfortunately.
And
But once you kind of get a few steps forward, then it
yeah.
gets a little easier.
Yeah, there's a lot of performers who are actually intro, outro. They're really weird.
Yeah,
They're kind of naturally quite introverted until they're on stage. And then when they
absolutely.
come off stage, they kind of again. I'm sometimes like that when I do networking events. I always call myself socially awkward at networking events. It takes me a little bit of time to warm up when I'm trying to do that cold chat. But put me on a stage or have me speaking to guests or audience, and I'm fine. But
Yeah,
that kind of weird social interaction of networking, I always find is a challenge. But
yeah. I
it's
couldn't agree with
necessary.
you more. It is absolutely necessary, and I know exactly how you feel because yeah, it's the same thing. Like I can, if I did a theater show, I have no problem going to the door afterwards, talking to guests as they're walking out, saying hi to people.
Yeah.
Of course, building that rapport with your co-stars or co-actors or whatever the case is. But yeah, as soon as you get to say, in my case, it might be like a red carpet event where I'm, you know, me, not a host, or say an actor, a meeting event or something like that. I'm the guy in the corner, kind of going, "Yeah, I think I know that guy." Yeah. And that's about it.
Yeah, yeah. And then once you get into it, after a bottle of whiskey, it's fine.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah. You just got to get that
just all of a
whiskey
sudden you're
first.
just the talk of the town. Uh,
Yeah, it's a true story.
Gary, thank you very much for joining this evening.
Thank
It
you.
has been a pleasure chatting to you and getting your insights and some of those great wee stories. I loved it. Ladies and gentlemen, Garry MacLean, thank you very much, Gary.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Garry MacLean, a local Calgarian theatre, TV producer, director, and also doing a fabulous show called Talent Talk, currently scrolling at the bottom of the screen. I'll let that go by one more time. Look at that, majestically rolling by. Look at it, like a beautiful centipede just scrolling away there. However, if anybody is enjoying the shows and wishes to be a guest, if you're in any form of performance, community, anything like that, lighting, engineering, anything to do with the performing arts in any medium, and that can be painters and artists and writers, I'm not discriminating against anybody. Apart from storytellers, don't want any of them on. They just no. I love storytellers. I've got to. It's my ego only allows me to love storytellers. But if you want to be a guest on the show, here is my email, calumlycanstoryteller@gmail.com. Do reach out to me. I've had a few people try that again. I have a few people who have emailed me that are getting booked on the show. So please, I'm always looking for new guests. I've got a big list, but I'm happy to have more people added to that or try and get you on sooner. Because you know what? Gary would have said it. I forgot to ask this one question, but one of the challenges we have doing this show is sometimes getting the guests and getting the scheduling right. So please drop me an email. Also, if you are enjoying the show, do remember we have our Patreon page. This is something I set up recently. This is to help kind of develop the show, bring in a bit of money to develop my studio, my equipment, develop me, maybe allow me to shave, which I forgot to do again. Razors are expensive. But more importantly, it's actually to allow me to give my guests a little bit something back. Everyone's investing time, allowing me to chat. There's Gary. We're looking at an hour and 40 minutes here. he has given me that time tonight, and they're doing it out the goodness of their heart. And, it's a little bit of promotion, but it's a nice entertainment for you guys. So if you are enjoying the show and wish to become a patron of it, do have a look at A Scotsman Talks To, our Patreon page, because what I'd like to do is put some of that money as to giving our guests a little gift. I can't promise to pay them, but I'd just like to give them something back for their time. So by becoming a patron, you will allow me to give a little bit something back to my guests as a gesture to say thank you. However, this brings us to the end of our show. Our next guest on the next episode is actually something a wee bit different as well. It's a podcast. I'm interviewing a podcasting couple, the Mess Hall Podcast. Avery and Lena Cochrane. Oh my goodness, she's going to kill me if I've got her name wrong again. They were scheduled for earlier, but we had to reschedule them due to a little bit of change in life patterns. But they are now coming on, and that will be a week today, which I should have really got my dates right, which I believe is the 16th of July. The Mess Hall Podcast. I was a guest on their podcast. They're going to be a guest on my show, and they will be joining me next week, same place, same time, Thursday, only on Thursdays now, on A Scotsman Talks To. Thank you for joining. Thank you again, Gary. You guys have been a wonderful audience. Thank you for the questions. Much love, and I'll see you all next week.